Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It is the Wednesday, January 14th, 2026 episode of the Marco Jure Show. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to hear all the groundbreaking news today in America and across the board. The only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best hour of radio. Uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go as always. I don't want to bore everyone today with what's happening in the foreign theater today. We've talked about that, obviously, in great detail yesterday. I want to switch it over to what's happening on the domestic front right here in America. So let's dive into what's happening right here on our own turf, shall we? The big talk, of course, is what's happening in Minnesota, particularly Minneapolis, what's going on with this death of Renee Good, and, of course, the legality behind it, of course. Now we're seeing these uprisings all across our major cities right here in America. I saw this article this morning in PJ Media, and it says here that the detail nobody wanted to hear, the ICE agent that suffered internal bleeding after Good struck him. So the whole issue with this entire event was the officer in line with the law? Was he able to retaliate in the way that he did? Now, I seem to believe that, obviously, he was. Again, I saw footage after footage, different angle. She clearly backs up. He's right in line with the car, right? He wasn't just standing in front of her vehicle. That's what I keep hearing from various people, even people that I respect greatly in their opinions. They said, well, the officer didn't need to be in this situation. We could talk about, obviously, ICE's conduct in many situations. I'm fine with all that. I am. But I'm talking about this isolated incident right now. This woman was clearly blocking traffic. There's no reason for her vehicle to be in a street facing like that. She was clearly trying to obstruct ICE from proceeding down the street or making an arrest or whatever it was that they were doing. And she was known as being a part of this group called ICE Watch. Again, what the hell do I care? Be a part of ICE Watch. Protest ICE all you want. You can stand out in front of their facilities with holding signs, saying whatever expletive you want in there. I don't care. But when you start to intervene inside an ICE operation, that's something completely different. That is illegal. That is against the law. You don't have a right to do that. Okay? And you don't have a right to block traffic, too, by the way, just for any reason you deem worthy. So we know right off the bat what she did was wrong. She was obviously creating, this garrison in the middle of the street. ICE then stops. The officer that shot her was already out of his vehicle before the officer that told her to get out of the vehicle was approaching the car. And he was, going around the vehicle. He was getting the license plate and what have you. He wasn't standing directly in front of her vehicle, though. He was standing to the right of it if you watch the video footage. Okay, and then the spouse or lover or whatever the hell you want to call the woman that egged her on to drive away was, again, accosting the officer, talking negatively to him. I guess I'll just leave it at that. She was cursing and what have you. Anyways, she's asked to get out of the vehicle. She puts the car in reverse, and when she does that and turns her wheel, she's facing the officer head on. Again, the officer has not taken his gun out of his holster yet. She then proceeds to drive forward. She makes eye contact with him. You can see it in the officer's own footage. He's got his phone out. She turns, she looks directly at him, and she hits that gas. Now, that minute, in that split second, that officer's life is in danger now. He doesn't know if she's going to ram into him, she's going to drive off and run away. We'd all love to think that she's just going to drive off into the sunset, and everything would be fine. But the idea is, of course, that she did make contact with this gentleman. So the question now is, was it legal for him to retaliate? Yes, it was. No officer is going to take this job, or any officer for that matter, if when their life is threatened, they're just going to sit there and go, well, I can't do anything about this now. I can't discharge my firearm. I'm supposed to let this woman just run me over with her vehicle. And just so we're all clear again, a vehicle is a lethal threat. Obviously, getting hit with over 2,000 pounds of I guess it'd be steel and plastic today. They don't make cars like they used to. Again, it's still heavy. There's still force behind it. And I said to you, if this officer did not post his hand on the vehicle and slide on the ice, which her car also slid on the ice too, she would have gone even faster than what she did. Now, we can obviously discuss whether she meant to do it or didn't do it. That's not the point here. You cannot drive a vehicle at an officer when they are detaining you, and you cannot refuse a lawful command. Everything that they were doing was completely aligned for that situation. Had he not posted his hand on the hood, she would have ran right into him. She did run into him, as far as we now know, based on this report. So it's now saying, out of CBS News, stating that, let's see here. The resulting internal bleeding triggered monitoring and medical intervention took place. So what we have here, this Officer Ross, that's his name, was treated afterwards, and it does show that he had to have medical assistance afterwards. This was blunt force trauma. And the idea that people are taking to the streets now and saying, you know what, this woman was well within her right, she can protest ICE, she can protest ICE. What she was doing was not protesting ICE, though. That's the big problem behind all this. And the idea that we're going to sit here and go, well, you know what, they had no right to, do what they're doing. Oh, we don't like that ICE looks like the Gestapo. If they're following out a lawful command, so in other words, if they're going to a home and they are going to make an arrest and detain somebody, they're well within, obviously, the purview of the law to do so. Now, Renee Nicole Good might not like that. She might want to say, I'm going to go protest. Okay, well, you have a right to protest. You don't have a right to interfere in any lawful activity. Just like if a police officer was making an arrest, you don't have a right to jump in and say, hey, don't do that, and start, accosting the police, getting in their way, preventing them from advancing. So there's obviously many things, that come into play here. But it's amazing to me. There's internal injuries consistent with blunt force trauma. So the car hit him. Says it resulted in internal bleeding, triggered imaging, monitoring, and medical intervention took place. This sequence only follows a serious physical impact. Yep, so she hit him. Then you had Jacob Frank coming out, well, it looked like, you're going to get hit harder with a refrigerator door. What the hell are you talking about, you idiot, you? What the hell do you know anyways? Another schmuck. Says here, it was unclear how extensive the bleeding was. The Department of Homeland Security confirmed, though, that Ross's injuries were sustained, obviously, by what took place, but has yet not responded to CBS News' request for more information. Yep, there we go. So this idea that she obviously wasn't trying to hit him, now whether or not her intention was to hit him or not, doesn't matter. If an officer feels his life is threatened by what you are doing, when you are detaining them, and they believe you are responding with lethal force, they are going to respond in kind. That's just the way law is. Now, no one has to be happy about this. No one wishes this upon anybody. I wish she just got out of the vehicle, was detained. Maybe they let her go. I don't know what they would have done. Maybe they would have arrested her. But that would have been a better scenario than what we obviously saw here. So yet, despite all this, though, we still have people in the streets, and we still have people obviously protesting against ICE. On yesterday's show, I read to you the list of Grammy nominees that are being arrested in Minneapolis, inside Minnesota, right now. Some of them were charged with sexual assault against children, rape, homicide, larceny, DUIs. How does this make a society better? That you have people inside a country that have no right to be there, that cause crimes of this such that I read to you yesterday. How could anyone possibly go in the streets and support that? That's beyond me. How could anyone do that? But yet here we are, and it's getting worse. It's getting worse. We're seeing lots of copycat situations. This is the New York Post, by the way. It says here, a woman was yanked out of her car by federal agents for allegedly impeding an immigration enforcement operation in Minnesota on Tuesday, today. Yep. It says footage captured the chaotic scene that broke out when the unidentified driver positioned her car across lanes of traffic, seeming to block ICE vehicles from driving through during an anti-ICE protest in Minneapolis. So this is getting worse and worse. People are accosting police officers. They're accosting, obviously, these ICE agents, what have you. This is all a repeat of, again, George Floyd. Doesn't matter that George Floyd OD'd. We all know he OD'd. Doesn't matter the cop's knee was not on his neck, but was on the back of his neck, touching his shoulder. Therefore, couldn't sustain the suffocation that was attempted against Derek Chauvin, of course. So those charges really are baseless when you know biology and what's going on. This is the same repeat. It was hate the cops then, anti-police rhetoric, defund the police. Now we're talking about defunding ICE, and you're seeing this come out of Democrats in the House now. They want to defund ICE. And believe you me, this is what they will do the moment they take power in 2026. That will be one of the first things they have on the table, is to defund ICE. Make no mistake about it. That's what they will do. So we see this. The people are getting riled up now. Obviously, people, I believe many of them are paid protesters. Why else would you be out on the streets doing this? Anyone with any serious cause in life or purpose is not going to go out day after day and support people of such that, again, like the people that I mentioned to you yesterday, from Laos, El Salvador, Mexico, all these other countries. Why would you do this? Why would you be a part of this? Do they not believe in borders? I mean, that's amazing to me. But here we go. We have people now doing the same exact thing that Renee Nicole Good was doing. And it's only a matter of time before something else happens to somebody else. Sorry to say. It's a very sad thing to see all this. Nobody wants to see this, but why are people putting their lives in danger, trying to impede law enforcement, following federal immigration law? Now, again, if they want to change the law, let them change the law in the House. That's one way to go about it, but why would someone else put themselves in this situation? And you have the same rhetoric coming from the people in the streets. When this woman is being detained, they're yelling, "Stop, that's so blanked up, all you do is hurt," calling up Nazis, "You'll pay for your crimes." Then, of course, agents have to disperse the crowd with tear gas, pepper balls, pepper spray, and again, to attempt to control this unruly crowd. Why are these people so hell-bent on people being in this country that have no right to be here? That's what I don't understand. I guess maybe it's just me. Maybe it's because I follow the law. Why would you put yourself in these situations where you're going to take on law enforcement now when they're following lawful commands? It doesn't make any bit of sense to me. By the way, neither does this article, also in the New York Post, says here that ICE-free zones were approved in Los Angeles County after unanimous vote. Amazing. So apparently they do recognize borders only when it's convenient to them. That's what it shows me right here. But look at this. A 5-0 vote was taking place on the LA Board of Stupidvisors. Right? Yep. They condemned the federal government, blasted dangerous ICE agents, and slammed them for being badly trained. Oh, yeah. Keep in mind there's at least 1.2 million illegals that reside just in LA, just so we're all clear on this. So the measure was called ICE-free zones. Across county-owned and county-controlled properties. And it says that there will be a follow-up vote on the matter in 30 days, and if approved, will go into effect towards the end of March, is what a spokesmoron told the New York Post. Again, we're seeing the same rhetoric coming out of Los Angeles that you're seeing out of New York and other cities across America. And I think she's the board chair, if I'm not mistaken, this woman, Horvath, let's see what she had to say. She said 2025 was the deadliest year to be in ICE custody in decades, the deadliest since at least 2004. The reality is weighing heavily on our immigrant communities throughout our country and across, throughout our county and across the country. Well, here's the problem, genius. Had LA not be a sanctuary city and California being a sanctuary state, just like Minneapolis is a sanctuary city, and Minnesota is a sanctuary state. Had you cooperated with ICE, even though you claim to, at least that's what Jacob Fry said. Oh, we always cooperate with ICE. No, you don't. You liar. Shut the hell up. You're lying. You're a sanctuary city. That means you refuse to follow federal law. That's what this tells us. And had LA County done the same thing, this would all be a much easier process. They choose not to, so it's a much more difficult process for ICE to enforce the law. It says LA County will not allow its property to be used as a staging ground for violence caused by the Trump administration. Our county public spaces should be places of safety and care, not fear. Pfft. Yeah, go walk around MacArthur Park sometime. Let me know how you feel. Go walk around Skid Row, by the way. Genius. Let me know what you feel there. You feel fear? You feel safety and care? It says we may not control federal enforcement everywhere, but we do control our own property. Our own property. First of all, it's not your property. And by the way, the federal law, in case you want to read the Constitution, genius. Amazing this comes from a city official, a politician, doesn't even understand the Constitution. Federal law trumps your city law, genius. Or your county law, or your state law. Just so we're all clear on this. So yes, they have a right to be in your city. You'd have a right to keep them out. And then the idea that public safety, oh my goodness. In Los Angeles, is she kidding me? She's got to be kidding me. She's got to be kidding me, folks. Yeah, there are some no-go zones in LA, folks, just so we're all understanding all this. It's just a joke. They don't really care about public safety. They care about votes. How do they get votes? More illegal aliens in the city. More illegal aliens show up to vote, the more they stay in power, the more they collect money. The more big donors put in their pockets, and they're in a safe position until they retire and, of course, collect a pension. That's what it all comes down to. It has nothing to do with your public safety in L.A. If it was, they'd clean up the streets, don't you think? The streets would be clean. They'd be the cleanest city on the planet had they given a damn about this. They'd have the best schools in the country. They don't. They're among some of the worst. Again, California's what? Second to last in the nation? For reading, writing, and mathematics? Yeah, there's a reason for that. They don't give a damn. They simply do not give a damn about you. So it's not a shock, but I think it's great. They're starting to understand that there are borders, and they're trying to enforce ridiculous laws that are, again, unconstitutional inside their borders. That's not going to fall too well in court, by the way. So good luck with that. The Board of Stupid Advisors, all women, by the way. Not that there's anything wrong with women. But can we get some brass on the boards? Maybe someone that knows what the hell's going on? Have the same morons on this board the entire time. Anyways, I digress. L.A., beautiful city, destroyed by idiots. Destroyed by the left. Absolutely, 100%. Let's talk the economy, though. This might be something beneficial for everyone listening. It says here in The Hill that the $2,000 tariff rebates may surface as Trump again hints at when proposed checks could go out. So all those tariffs that Trump put on various countries, causing you to pay more money, well, they decided maybe it's time to give you some of that money back. Just like at the end of the year when the IRS gives you back your own money and you get all happy about, I get some more money back. Same situation with this. Right? And you get a little bit back. You don't get a lot of it back, but you get a little bit of it back. Right? They can rob you blind for years. They can tax you here, tax you there, tax you everywhere. 7 ways from Sunday. But then you get some money back and you're all of a sudden happy about it. Well, so it says this year could bring several windfalls for Americans, including large tax refunds and extra paychecks. Aren't you happy now? Even though your dollar's crumbling, your purchasing power is going in the trash can, and you're still getting taxed to oblivion, by the way. Our founders wouldn't even recognize this nation. Taxing wages directly? That's completely unconstitutional. Just so we're clear on this. Now, it seems another potential payout, tariff dividends, remains on the table right now, even if the future is a bit murkier. But President Trump has been touting this $2,000 rebate system, funded by the tariffs, of course, for months. I thought we were supposed to use the tariffs for paying down our exorbitant national debt. $38.5 trillion is it now? How are we going to pay that off? And again, Trump goes out there, he says these things. I don't know if he's going to follow through on it, but he's actually talked about getting rid of the federal income tax system. That means the IRS would go away. Goodbye. See you later. What he should do is destroy the Fed, though. If he really wants to be serious, destroy the Fed. Get rid of the Federal Reserve. And I guess with that, if you get rid of taxes, you can take away the Treasury. So goodbye to Scott Bessent. See you later. Adios. I guess you could keep Scott Bessent because if you're going to pay everything with tariffs, I guess you may need a Treasury, of course, still. But wouldn't that be great? Get rid of the Fed. Congress controls the dollar now. Maybe get it backed in something for the first time in God knows how many decades. And create some stabilization of the currency versus destroying it, which is what we're seeing right now. And by the way, this didn't happen just under President Trump. This has been going on since the Fed was created back in 1913. Illegally, too, by the way. But essentially in November, Trump told reporters on separate occasions that the checks would be dispersed sometime in 2026 and middle of 2026. A little bit later than that is what they're suggesting. Again, it's a nice gesture. I think people would like this, but people don't want a limited handout. What do I mean by this? People don't want just a one-time check of $2,000. In many cities, that's going to be gone before the end of the month. I mean, probably by the end of the week, in many regards. God knows you pay back some loans or debt, or maybe you buy something you need. That's gone like that. It's not going to stick around very long. It's not like you're getting $200,000, People want opportunities. They want stability in the markets and in the economy. They want to see that their dollar is strong and not doing poorly, and that it's purchasing more than what it's giving them. They don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. They want opportunities. They want stability. They want all these things. They want the opportunity to buy a home, to have children, buy a decent car, right? They want all these things. $2,000, what is that? Nothing today. Nothing today. Absolutely nothing. And while people will obviously take it, I mean, who wouldn't want to take extra money given back to you that's yours? The gesture itself, I think, is going to fall flat on itself. And I think, again, this is just another attempt to show, oh, look, the Trump administration is working for us. We're getting some money back that's ours, right? Right? Even though you're paying extra and all these tariffs. You're paying for that cost. You're paying for that consumer price index that's gone up. And, of course, the inflation that soon follows behind it. Just so we're all understanding this. I don't think this is going to work in the long term. Maybe for a couple people, this will be a nice little gesture. But for most people, they want to see improvement. They want to see that the government is working for them. They want to see that the government's investing in them. They want to see the prices of goods going down. Not getting a couple $1,000 once a year. Again, what's that going to do? Very little, if at anything. Let people keep their earnings. Let people do that. If you allow that to happen, then you're going to see people start to get on board with the Republican ticket. They're going to say, well, look, the government's moving in a better direction. We're seeing more growth. We're seeing more GDP based on, obviously, manufacturing. And, of course, small businesses are rising up. People can afford things. The amount of people in debt is getting smaller and smaller. The labor participation force is going up, up, up. There's more opportunities for our children, our grandchildren. People like that. They don't just like a little handout once in a while. And this attempt at socialism and, I guess, wealth distribution, I don't even know what you would call this. I would call it welfare handouts, is simply not going to last. People are going to forget that very, very quickly. Let's get the opportunities back, Donald. You can do this. Oh, you can. Start investing in America. Stop investing in these wars. Okay, in this idea that we're going to buy Greenland, which NBC News, by the way, this morning came out and said would cost us $700 billion to buy an ice sheet, and then what, develop it afterwards? This, and especially if we go to war with Iran, if we increase the defense budget by, $600 billion? Upping it to $1.5 trillion? Borrow more money for what? Again, I warned you, this is going to be a wartime budget. So do we foresee a war coming in the near future? I think that's likely. I told you before, the rhetoric is already there to go into Iran. The rhetoric's already there to continue to stay in Venezuela, to go into Mexico, Cuba, Colombia, Nicaragua, any country we feel like, apparently. And now we're going to take Greenland. All this costs lots of money. It costs lots of money to bring people there, to house people there, to bring soldiers there. and again, to invest in there. You'll recall I told you the other day it's going to cost $183 billion over the course of some 16 years, roughly, just to get 3 million barrels of oil per day inside Venezuela. Does that sound lucrative to you? Doesn't to me. So what is Trump going to do? Well, I mean, this is the big question. What is he going to do? Because the time is running out. He's only got a couple months for the primaries of this year to start rolling, and people kind of make up their decision, saying, you know what? I'm going to go with the other ticket now. I'm going to go with the Democrats now. I'm an independent. I'm going to go with the Democrats. Or maybe you're a Republican. You say, you know what? I'm out. I'm just not voting. I don't like what the Republicans are doing. I certainly don't like what the Democrats are doing. This is all momentum for the Democrats if we give it to them. Progress has got to be on the table. If Trump wants to be a peace candidate, as he said he was, I mean, I could give you quote after quote where he says, I'm going to stop wars, not start wars. For 2026, I want peace on earth. How do we get peace when we go and abduct a president of another country under bogus drug charges? How do we work for peace when we say we could take Greenland by force, by military force? And again, that costs these other nations as well. It doesn't make any sense. You know what else doesn't make any sense is this article in Fox Business says Newsom says California wealth tax really damaging as billionaires move money and businesses out of the state. California, again, beautiful state run by schmucks. It really is. And it's very sad to see that because it is a beautiful place to be, despite all the chaos that we continue to see, and of course the morons that run it. Since our California Governor Gavin Newsom, though, acknowledged that this wealth tax proposal is really bad. And Newsom said that he now feels vindicated in opposing the proposed wealth tax after reports showed some of California's wealthiest residents moving money and businesses out of the state, which again has been continuing on since COVID started, by the way. There's been a mass exodus out of California, not a mass immigration into the state. Well, of course, you account for the illegals that tend to flock there because it's a sanctuary state. Anyways, he said, this is my fear, he said to a Politico interview. It's just what I warned against. It's happening. It's been happening, you schmuck. Haven't you realized this? People can't wait to get the hell out of California. Anyone I talk to, anyone of retiring age I talk to says, that was in California, they say, once I retire, I'm gone. I can't tell you the number of people I know that have retired. They have simply just left the state. They've taken their retirement. They've sold their home. They take that and they go somewhere else. And when you make something unaffordable or unsafe or unlivable, like Gavin Newsom has done in California, people are going to start leaving. People are going to start leaving, and you're seeing it right now. And this proposed wealth tax, rich people can afford to live in California. If you're a billionaire, you can afford to live in California. You can afford to live anywhere. But why would they pay you 5% of their wealth when they can just move their assets somewhere else? That doesn't make any sense. They'll just simply move their headquarters out. They'll move their primary residence out so that they can avoid paying these exorbitant taxes. That's what it comes down to. And they always have these loopholes for the uber wealthy to go in and start doing this, right? Congress writes these. That's why it's so funny when people like Elizabeth Warren come out and Bernie Sanders, right? Pay your fair share. Pay your fair share. Okay, all right, Bernie. All right. The screeching voice of Elizabeth Warren coming out, they need to pay their fair share. Okay, lady, you're the one who wrote these tax proposals, so people can have loopholes to use an accountant to get out of paying these exorbitant taxes. It's ridiculousness. Same thing. Bernie Sanders, we have a housing crisis. We do? We do. You don't. You have 3 houses, dunce. What the hell are you talking about? We. It's unbelievable, these people. Gavin Newsom's no different, though. Cut from the same cloth, right? Still a schmuck. But you want to say this, the evidence is in. The impacts are real. Not just substantive economic impacts in terms of the revenue, but startups, the indirect impacts of people questioning long-term commitments, medium-term commitments. That's not a time of so much uncertainty. Quite the contrary. Well, then, tell the idiots in Sacramento that, you control to stop this nonsense. Stop it right now. Look at this. Would propose a one-time 5% on the net worth of California residents with assets exceeding $1 billion. Tax would be due in 2027, and taxpayers could spread payments over 5 years with interest, according to Legislative Analyst Office. Yep, there you go. And by the way, you know who's backing this? The SEIU. United Healthcare Workers West said they want to impose this. Yeah, well, they want the money. Of course they do. By the way, the SEIU also helped destroy the state of California, too, by the way, just so we don't ever forget that. They're going to try to do it again. This is what they want. So if if approved by the voters, the measure is going to be applied to anyone in California who was a resident starting January 1st, 2026. Now, because of that provision, several prominent business figures and billionaires have reportedly relocated now or restructured holdings outside of the state. So good. You know how much money they're going to lose in this entire idiotic deal? Gavin Newsom, he must want to sink the state. That's the only thing I can come up with. This idiot just wants to sink the state. They're expected to lose, get this, $1 trillion. Can you imagine that? Moving $1 trillion out of the state just that quickly? Says this includes Google co-founder Larry Page. Public filings reviewed by Fox News Digital from the California Secretary of State's office show that several businesses entities linked to Page were relocated out of the state in December because he's thinking ahead. He understands what's going on. He also reportedly purchased 2 Miami properties valued at $73.4 million. Good for him. Good for him. And we have Larry Ellison, the dunce, who now wants to own TikTok. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this mess. You never seen anything like this before. Yeah, and another one. Just wants to move right out of the state, right? Let's see what it says about him. It says Oracle chairman Larry Ellison sold his San Fran Schmucko mansion for about $45 million. Well, the New York Times reported that the Google co-founder Sergey Brin and venture capitalist Peter Thiel have also shifted some business operations out of California. So here's what they do. They vote for these clowns, right? They vote for Gavin Newsom. They back him. They vote for the dunces on the board of supervisors in each county that they live in. They vote for the obviously the Democratic state assemblyman or woman or it or whatever it is they call them, state senator. They propose these awful ideas, right? Or they back the labor unions that propose this nonsense. And then when the going gets bad, they leave the state. Then they all cry wolf. Oh, I can't believe this, right? That idiot Jillian Michaels did the same thing. Voted for Gavin Newsom multiple times. Voted for Democrats her whole life. Then she leaves and goes to Florida. Now she's on Fox News talking about how awful Democrats are. Hey, idiot, you voted for it. You schmuck. It'd be shocking if it wasn't so shocking. But that's the way the liberal mind works, folks. They destroy one area that was, again, once pristine, beautiful, vibrant, growing, under Republican control for over 60 years, roughly. And, of course, the Democrats moved in and they destroyed the state of California. It's a very sad thing to see. Anyways, folks, so I thought you'd all be interested in hearing about that. How about how Gavin Newsom, who desperately wants to become president, really, really wants to destroy California first, though. That seems to be his number one thing. Look at this, though. The SEIU United Healthcare Workers West Chief Staff Suzanne Jimenez told Fox News Digital in a statement on Tuesday it appears that Gavin Newsom is trying to push this crisis on to the next administration. That's deeply disappointing at the moment when our communities need leadership. If he could see what frontline healthcare workers see every day, seniors, people with disabilities, and veterans at risk of losing care because of massive federal health care cuts in H.R. 1, he wouldn't be standing in the way of this ballot measure. So what's the excuse for everything? Not find ways to lower the cost of health care or insurance premiums. It's just simply let's tax the hell out of billionaires one time, and that one time becomes many times after that. Just so, again, we understand what's happening right now. All right, folks, let's move on. This article in Newsweek now shed some really interesting light on what's happening in the terms of what's happening in the Fed. It says here that potential new chair Fed Rick Rieder speaks on drama surrounding role. Who is Rick Rieder? Well, he is the chief investment officer of BlackRock. Yep. So that's it. We're going to have BlackRock come in to run the Fed now. Unbelievable. Says here he is the CEO of the Global Fixed Income. Made the remarks after the Trump administration's criminal investigation of Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell prompted a defense from former Fed chairs and even some of the Republican senators who will vote on what President Trump's eventual pick to replace Powell as Fed chair as his term expires in May. So we're going to put someone who's in charge of one of the biggest investment firms that, again, they own everything. BlackRock. I told you before, they're buying up a lot of these single-family communities, right? And now this guy's going to lead our currency. He's going to control all the dollars. Sound like a good thing? Does it sound like draining the swamp to you? Something tells me it's not. I think this is a very, very bad move, folks. This is not America first, putting these big, investment firm investors into these positions of power. I don't think this is going to be beneficial for anybody. We know Trump wants Powell gone because he's not doing exactly what he says. But what is the whole thing behind this guy? Why do we want Rieder in here? Now, he already declined to confirm that an interview with President Trump would take place on Thursday when asked on CNBC, but he said that all I will say is I've seen a bunch of the stories that have been out today in the press. Stories that are out today, they seem reasonably accurate. So again, Trump probably wants this guy. So we're going to let the head of one of the heads of BlackRock that's buying up everything, right? They buy up all these small corporations, companies, mergers, acquisitions, all this nonsense. And this guy's going to be the one controlling our currency. Do you see the red flag in this, folks? Because I do. And it's not going to be a very, very good one. When asked if he would be comfortable being Fed chair, given the recent developments, Rieder declined to comment, but expressed that he believes the Fed will remain independent and driven by the data. Yeah, right. That's unbelievable. Driven by what data? You guys make up things out of your own thin air. So this is going to be a disaster. Let me just say that to you. And he says, I think the Fed has got to get the rate down. The Fed's got to get the rate down to 3%. I think that's closer to the equilibrium. 3%. So he's talking about 3% inflation before they can lower the interest rates. Now, what did I tell you was going to happen when we lower the interest rates, though? As the interest rates get lower, the purchasing power of the dollar also gets lower, folks, because you have more money, cheap money, that he's going to be printing out ad nauseum, giving to God knows who. Not you and I, of course. They're going to create more money, more dollar bills in the economy. And this to stimulate the economy is what they'll say. Well, that's true. Getting more money into the hands of other people will help stimulate the economy. But what happens when you have the same amount of dollars chasing the same amount of goods? More dollars chasing the same amount of goods. Inflation, folks. Inflation. Not a good thing. Never a good thing. Oh, by the way, Trump is also going to be speaking to the World Economic Forum in Davos next week. Why, I have no idea. Again, he's aligning himself with globalists. What, you don't think the owners of BlackRock are globalists? Of course they are. They're buying everything up that they can. Buying you out of single-family homes, buying up businesses, buying up properties. It's all to benefit themselves. And they'll keep taking more and more and more. Never forget that. More and more and more. Says our U.S. President Donald Trump will return to the World Economic Forum's annual meeting of business, political, and cultural elites in Davos, Switzerland next week. God knows what he's going to be talking about. The Geneva-based think tank says Trump, whose assertive foreign policy on issues as diverse as Venezuela and Greenland in recent months has stirred up some concerns among U.S. friends and foes alike. He will be accompanied by 5 cabinet secretaries and other top officials for the event running from Monday through January 23rd. So he's going to speak to a bunch of CEOs and government leaders about what? Look at this. It says here that some of the people in attendance will be Presidents Vladimir Zelensky, who's the de facto president and co-head of Ukraine, and Ahmed al-Shara of Syria, the de facto president of Syria. Isn't that great? A guy who used to kill Americans, chop their heads off, chop their hands off, killed people. Has killed some of the Druze and Alawites in Syria right now. And Christians, of course. We don't say anything about Christians getting killed in Syria. And David Petraeus loves him. He thinks he's great. This is a guy on the America's Most Wanted list. Had a bounty in his head for $10 million. How come we don't go kidnap him in the middle of the night, folks? That's what I want to know. Yeah, a series of failed state, of course. This is a total of 64 heads of state or government are expected so far. Also a record, though the number could increase before the start of the event. What could he possibly be talking about in regards to foreign affairs? What's he going to talk about? That he stopped 8 of these conflicts that go around the world that are still going on? I don't understand this. What is the necessary need for this at a time right now where there's so much blowback from what he's doing in Venezuela and how he has threatened Cuba, Mexico, Nicaragua, Colombia, threatened Greenland? He threatened to go into a NATO country, folks, just with force. It's amazing to me. Also, other talking globalist heads, Ursula von der Leyen, European Commission President, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and World Trade Organization Director, I can't even say this guy's name, and I don't even want to know how to say his name. I don't want to know. Jensen Huang of NVIDIA will be there, and Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. There you go. So all the people that we're supposed to drain the swamp from are going to be there just to listen to him. And, of course, Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be there in attendance, Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, Jameson Greer, and, of course, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff have to be there, too. Why wouldn't they be? Why would they? After all, they're trying to broker a peace deal, talking about 200,000 acres, of territory inside Ukraine for this peace deal that's going on, right? That's never going to happen as of right now, just so, again, we understand this. So it'll be interesting to hear what Trump says at this meeting, right? All right. USA Today has a very striking article. I think you'll all be very interested to hear. Bill and Hillary Clinton refused to testify in Congress over the Epstein probe. So now they're going to be held in contempt of court. Contempt of Congress, excuse me. And House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer confirmed this just yesterday. But it says that the Republican lawmakers said that they will move forward next week with contempt of Congress proceedings after former President Bill Clinton failed to show up for the scheduled January 13th deposition in the House Oversight Committee in his investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Both he and Hillary Clinton have refused to sit for depositions in the GOP-run probe, according to a January 12th letter sent to the committee by their attorneys, who argue that the subpoenas issued to them by Republican-led panels are unenforceable. Interesting. Yet when they probed, what's his name? Well, I can't think of his name now. Steve Bannon, there we go. He went to jail for this, didn't he? For contempt of Congress? He didn't show up to the J6 hearings? How about, what's his name? I don't know why I'm drawing so many blanks today. It'll come to me in a second. But there's so many Democrats that continue to not go out and follow these subpoenas, and of course nothing ever happens to them. Nothing. Not a thing. Eric Holder. That's who I'm thinking of. Eric Holder. Eric Holder. Fast and the Furious. Held in contempt of Congress. Did he go to jail? Did he get arrested? Nope. But of course you have Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon, all these other people getting arrested for, contempt of Congress, of course. So the rules obviously simply don't apply. How they're saying this can be unenforceable is beyond me. I don't understand what their lawyers are trying to get out here. But again, I don't think anything's going to happen to either of them. They're too powerful. And Comer wanted to say, we've communicated with President Clinton's legal team for months now, giving them opportunities after opportunity to come in to give us a day, and they continue to delay. I think it's very disappointing. Nothing's going to happen here, folks. Which is why we need to release these files. This is what I've been saying from day one. No one's going to play ball with you. You can show picture after picture of Bill Clinton, email after email with his name in there. It doesn't matter. What you have to do is show us what actually happened. And if people committed crimes, what is the DOJ doing to create an investigation, to go after these people? That's what I want to know. Where's the investigations? What's in these documents that could lead to, again, some type of trial for the people that were associated with Jeffrey Epstein? And how is it that we had this, a bill? The Epstein Files Transparency Act. Yet nothing has been released to the American people. We got some photos, right? Some corny photos. Half of them are redacted anyways. You can't see anything about what's going on. But how is it that they have millions of pages to go through, and yet nothing has been released to the American people yet? What are they trying to hide? That's the big question. And again, it's another bad look for the Trump administration the longer they do this. You signed into law a bill. You were going to release these files to the American people to show transparency, and yet somehow you haven't done a damn thing about it. And you haven't talked about it either. Wouldn't President Trump be upset that his bill is not being enforced to show that he's the most transparent president in American history? It's interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. And again, on the day that they're supposed to come out and give us this explanation, we go into Venezuela. It's starting to add up for you folks, because it's adding up pretty well for me. They're never going to play ball with this. The Clintons are going to play ball with this, just like they never got in trouble for anything they've done before in the past. When Hillary Clinton destroyed 33,000 emails, when she, bleached her hard drive so nobody could get access to anything, did anything happen to her? She was under subpoena then, wasn't she not? What happened to her? Nothing. Nothing at all. So it's a big game, folks, and obviously, people are going, oh, yes, here we go. We're going to hold them in contempt. Nothing's going to happen. So don't hold your breath on that either, folks. All right, let's move on. Again, lots going on. I think this article is a good one to end the day on, too, folks. I think this one is a very good one to end the day. We've been talking recently, at least we've seen in the news, through the Gateway Pundit, that Justice Brown Jackson, that's such an odd name to call somebody, faceplants with a bizarre word salad of a question while trying to defend boys and girls sports. Yep. Are we shocked? Why would we be? Now, they go on to say that she's the dumbest Supreme Court justice, and once again has humiliated herself, obviously. I don't know that she's the dumbest person. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I've never spoken to her. She went to Harvard for undergrad. I think she got a degree in government and then went on, obviously, to get her Juris Doctorate. I don't know if she's a dumb person, but she's definitely an ideologue. Absolutely 100%. And when you're in a position where you're trying to back something that has really no scientific or even legal precedent to it, you're going to sound like an idiot. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. But she went on to embarrass herself so severely that even Neil Gorsuch had to step in at one point. This is the woman who, during her confirmation hearing, she went out and she said the following thing when Marsha Blackburn questioned her on, what is a woman? Take a listen to this. This will make you shake your head just a little bit, I'd have to say.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
Okay, so she's not a biologist. All right, I understand that. Not a biologist. She doesn't understand, obviously, basic chromosomes. Okay, it's understandable. She's not a biologist. She doesn't understand. So she can't really say really indefinitely that women are XX chromosomes and males are XY chromosomes. She can't figure that out. All right, she can't describe that. Obviously, the word male and female is referring to biology. She can't figure it out. And of course, those chromosomes cause different, obviously, skeletal structures, obviously, musculoskeletal structures, obviously, different reproductive organs and what have you. She can't figure that out. Now, her position on this comes from being an ideologue. What do I mean by this? Let's understand who this woman is, by the way. Okay, so I told you before she went to Harvard. She studied her undergrad there, got her law degree from Harvard. Obviously not an easy thing to do. At least I would imagine it's not an easy thing to do, despite the idiocy we see coming out of Harvard as of late. But while she was there, she was a part of this Black Student Association. Okay, fine. She's part of this organization on campus. But then she led a protest against a student who donned a Confederate flag from his dormitory window. So she can be a part of a black student association. Obviously, I'm imagining this is exclusively for black students on the campus. But if you want to have a Confederate flag in your room, she's going to protest against your right to do that. So much for freedom of speech, and of course, her lack of understanding for the history of the Civil War. I imagine she thinks it was still fought over slavery, which again is a complete and utter lie. Anyways, that's another topic for another day. She led another protest, though, that there weren't enough full-time professors in the Afro-American Studies Department. So, obviously, we need to bolster up this wonderful group. I guess that teaches the world so many important things. But you could see her obsession with race early on in her history. And obviously her protesting for her ideology. She understands this. Now, she was also said to have been really influenced from a professor at Harvard who focused on what is called communitarianism. Now, this is a philosophy, by the way, just so we understand this, where one's social identity is kind of put aside, and of course their personality as well, and the idea that the community is the most important aspect, not so much the individual. So we're focusing on a community-based philosophy. So in other words, your aspects of your community shape you. Fine, I can understand that. Your community shapes you. Nature versus nurture. Okay, fine, whatever. Obviously, your family plays a big role. Your church or organizations you're a part of, they play a big role in your life. No one doubts that. But the idea that society now is going to be based on the community as a whole. What is the community doing? Obviously speaks to something a little bit much different. And while this all sounds nice and fine to some of you, the roots for this philosophy stem from British utopian socialists movements in the 19th century. Just like the Green Movement came out of Russia in the 1970s. Right, it's no shock, or I should say the Soviet Union, by the way. But communes was a big factor in this and what have you. So we're talking about communism, just so we understand this. And again, one of the tenets of this ideology is that rights must be paired with the duties to your community. Now, they don't go into great detail about what this means, but doesn't this sound like it's one size fits all? Right? We all have a shared responsibility. I can agree with that part. We all need to be good stewards of our environment, our communities, our cities. But to keep everybody in line with certain ethos or laws, or maybe excluding people from doing certain things or the such, it doesn't really make any bit of sense to me. If everyone's putting in the same effort, could we really say that? Right? Everyone's putting in the same amount of effort. Everyone's doing the same things. What have you. What is the purpose of this? You have a right. Again, America was founded on individual rights, not groupthink. Well, we all have the same rights. We're all individuals, though. We pursue our goals differently. Other people work harder than other people. Other people have different skills that are different than other people. Other people might produce something that other people might not want so much of. Everything is different in this country. So again, there's not anything wrong with that, but we chart our own destiny. Not Big Brother. Not some talking head in a city hall, if you will. But fast forward to this case now where Ketanji Brown Jackson comes in and says, obviously that, well, I'll read this to you. It says here that two biological males, Lindsay Hecox of Idaho and Becky Pepper Jackson of West Virginia, sued their respective states, claiming that they discriminate based on sex and that their transgender status, right? I guess this is now a right, right? There's some privileges that come with being a transgender. And they claim that their state's laws ban every transgender female, which, again, is a male, from school sports and treat them worse than others. Now, West Virginia and Idaho are simply relying on science to ensure, obviously, there's actual fair play going on, and, of course, the rights of the other female athletes. But now to them, this is discrimination. But this is who Ketanji Brown Jackson is backing up. During her oral arguments, Ketanji Brown Jackson ignored the biology and promptly took the side of the males who are claiming to be females. Now, so there's two things that are happening at once here. Number one, you have obviously two men who are males that are confused. They either believe or they just feel like being a woman. Okay, and then they're going to be competing with women in these sports. Well, we know that obviously men and women differ in terms of physical attributes. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong to say that. That's just the truth. Men are different than women. Women are different than men. Obviously, we can agree on this. I would hope so. And, we have different hormonal differences, obviously, and those hormones trigger different responses in the body. So for men, obviously, we have more testosterone. We've got more muscle mass, more bone density. Hemoglobin levels. We have greater, obviously, oxygen output, right, in our body composition. We have lower body fat percentages. There's obviously skeletal differences as well. Obviously I said our aerobic capacity is much, much different. We have a larger heart, larger lungs that obviously cause that. And when you're competing in obviously something of a physical nature, men are going to have the upper hand every time a woman. That doesn't mean a woman cannot exceed and do great things, of course. But there are obviously genetic differences between the two. 100%. Absolutely 100%. So her idea that she's going to come here and say that obviously the state is discriminating against two young men who have undergone medical transition should be treated the same way as actual men under the equal protection of law. They are men, but she's saying they're actually women. But yet she told us earlier she couldn't even define a woman. So what is she talking about here? Now, she went through a word salad. I don't really need to play this for you, I don't think. I'll play a little bit of it, just so you can hear it right now. And again, she's trying to make a point based on, again, ideology, not science, not constitutional law. Let's take a listen quickly. We'll see how Miss Jackson does.
This is what 92 hair washes can do in 6 months.
I seem to have a commercial up in this space here. Not good. That's not what I want. And again, I want you to hear the word salad, so we'll let this play out. I apologize. But you'll hear just momentarily how stupid this woman sounds. Let's take a listen now.
And so, to the extent that you...
I don't know why my audio's not working, folks. Okay, it's not important. It doesn't matter. What's important, though, is that she's not following the law. That's the big takeaway from this. She's not following the law. And she goes on to say, so to the extent that you have an individual who says what is happening in this law is that it is treating someone who is transgender but does not have, because of the medical interventions and other things that have been done, who does not have the same... you get the point. She's not making any sense. She's like Kamala Harris, except she sits on the Supreme Court. And it doesn't seem to make any bit of sense. Because it doesn't make any sense. Scientifically, it doesn't make any sense. Biologically, it doesn't make any sense. And she made a fool of herself. And at the end, of course, she keeps trying. And then Justice Gorsuch has to step in. Now, I want to read to you, too, this other part of the case. Sam Alito, who I think is very brilliant, stepped in at one point, and he had an exchange with one of the ACLU lawyers. So, remember, these are the people that have helped destroy the country as well. Her name is Kathleen Harnett. And he says, well, to pick up on the issue of discrimination on the basis of transgender status, let me go back to some basics. Do you agree that at school, that a school may have separate teams for a category of students classified as boys and as a category of students classified as girls? And she says, yes, Your Honor. He says, so if it does that, then it is not necessarily for there to be for equal protection purposes. if that is challenged under the Equal Protection Clause, in understanding of what it means to be a boy or a girl or a man and a woman. She says again, yes, Your Honor. And then so he gets her right here. He says, and what is that definition for equal protection purposes? What does it mean to be a boy or a girl or a man and a woman? Well, this was too much. This was absolutely too much for the ACLU lawyer. Obviously, this was above her pay grade. She couldn't answer the question. How utterly sad. How utterly sad. And it comes, again, as no shock that they can't answer the questions. They don't know what they're talking about. And that, my friends, is how you stomp these Democrats. Because when it comes down to this particular topic, it's simply ideological. It's not based on any science. And that's the whole takeaway from this entire concept. Every single thing is ideological. No, men cannot become women. Women cannot become men. That's simply not true. No matter what surgery you go through, no matter what you do with your hormones, you simply cannot change what sex you are. God determined that. And as time goes on, I hope more people will understand this. I hope more people will recognize this. But this was not a very good case for, obviously, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and really for the ACLU lawyers challenging these two cases in these respective states. By the way, I'll just remind you really, really quickly that Title IX, right? Title IX. And Richard Nixon put this into effect. And one of the provisions in it simply states that you cannot discriminate based on sex. Well, wouldn't you be doing that by putting men in women's sports, folks? Nobody else wants to ever talk about that. So I think that's a very good thing we need to always look at. That is federal law, too, by the way. And that was done to ensure protection of females in sports. So they got that to try to go through. Folks, thanks so much for being here today. I appreciate you so much. Sorry we had some audio difficulties, but I will be back here with you tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Jure Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.